Welcome back everybody to Mark Hollowitz, the vlog. Thanks for joining in on this wonderful, wonderful day. Today, what are we standing in front of the F-Type R again? And today we're going to talk about modifications and should this car be modified? I mean, these things are so good out of the factory, one has to actually wonder whether they actually need any kind of serious changes or modifications or upgrades or what have you. I mean, there's lots good. I mean, the style, they've got all the wheel packages as standard, they've got the power, they've got the sound. I mean, why would you upgrade exhaust? Why would you upgrade wheels? Why would you upgrade any of that? Well, in short, personalization. So let's look at a few of those things and ask the question. I'll ask you guys, drop in the comments below what you think. Do I need to change any of that? Should I make any changes to the car in general? Any of these parts that we focus on today, should I look at that? Well, then we'll go for a ride and I'll explain to you why you may or may not want to actually upgrade or modify these cars. So let's just take a look around the car and we'll talk about a few of the things that I've heard of so far that are available as mods for this car and things that maybe I've considered. Now, of course, a lot of you guys have probably heard of Hennessy. They create a lot of aftermarket upgrades for a lot of these high performance cars, Corvettes and Vipers and all that kind of fun stuff. Well, they do have a kit for this car as well. Hey, wink, wink. If you guys are interested in maybe sending me a kit, I wouldn't mind possibly featuring it. But anyhow, enough about that. Hennessy has a kit where you can actually do, what they do is they put a pulley, a tune, exhaust, intercooler, and it all gets dialed in, dynoed, and the whole works, and it's turnkey, and it's apparently very, very reliable. So that is an option. It comes at a bit of a cost, but it sounds like what that does is bumps you up to 650 ponies. So one thing you can do other than the wheels, upgrading possibly the rims and tires, you got 20-inch right now factory, maybe you can go with a 21-inch rim. Also, one thing to consider, you got 295s on the back. They're pretty beefy looking, there's no doubt about it, but you could go a little bigger. As a matter of fact, you get a wider rim. You could also stuff a wider tire on there. And likely that would do a good justice because if you look at it, it could use a little more beef here. Or what I would do with these stock wheels, if you like the wheels, which I love these with the carbon fiber finish on them, what I would say is the other option is I may look at wheel spacers because then that can actually bring the wheels out. Maybe not quite flush. You never want to go flush here because there's a bit of a lip and you could wind up rubbing. And I had that experience on my 335. It takes some messing around to get it right. But you can do wheel spacers on the rear, you can do wheel spacers as well on the front because you see the front wheel is also recessed there, so I would look at that. Another great upgrade, even is to throw some vinyl on here. I've seen cars, for example, some of the AMGs, the GT series cars, people have that stripe up the middle or even offset stripe. That would look pretty cool on there. Can't do it up on the roof because the roof is glass, so that stripe would only end on the hood and possibly finish it off on the tail. I'm not sure how that would look, but that's an option too, is put some vinyl on it. I've also thought about splatting some vinyl accents, possibly little panels like that, maybe doing some different colors, maybe the handles, you know, red. We've got red calipers that look absolutely spectacular on there like that in red. Why not maybe make these accents in red, possibly the Jaguar or the handles, or possibly, well, maybe not that so much, possibly these little pieces in here, maybe do that in red. Whatever it looks like, I think doing a little vinyl would just make it pop even more. Quite frankly, would make it stand out and become a little bit more unique. So if we pop the hood, we can have a quick look under there and then take a better look at what could be done under the hood. Let's open that. All right. Lift that up. Okay, now we have the magic. This is where the 550 horsepower is born, right here. So you could do the pulley upgrade. So the supercharger's tucked way under here. You could put the pulley upgrade on there, which of course accelerates, speeds up the actual supercharger, therefore putting more pressure into the engine. Where the intercooler comes in is Hennessy's got an intercooler. There's a lot of aftermarket kits out there that don't involve an intercooler. That creates extra heat in the engine. Of course, as you compress more and more air at a higher pressure, that yields more heat. Well, that heat, you want to dissipate that. So an intercooler is always a good idea, whether you're dealing in higher boost pressures from a supercharger or a turbocharger. You always want to have proper intercooling to dissipate the heat that can be found in there. So again, pulley, maybe intercooler, as I said, Hennessy has that, and certainly a tune to make the best of that extra boost. Now, quite honestly, I would be reluctant to go with just some random parts to up the boost and pulley on these engines. They're quite expensive if you start deciding to blow this thing up. So I would definitely want to go with something that's more tried and true, go with a reputable tuner. Again, Hennessy has a system that sounds like it's dialed in. but there's other options out there as well. I know there is, or I know there are, so I may have to look at something like that. Another option is back here in the exhaust. Yeah, you could do an upgraded exhaust, obviously stainless steel under here. You could replace that stainless muffler with an SVR. Of course, we're driving the R-Type. While you have the SVR, they actually have an improved exhaust system. It's lighter throughout, so there's a lot of upgrade options for exhaust systems for these cars, and that might be another add-on. But of course, these cars sound so good already from stock, one begs the question whether you even need to bother upgrading the muffler. That's the ultimate question here. One other thing I thought of possibly too is lowering the car. That's one thing since I noticed since day one. It looks great, trust me. I love the looks of it. It's amazing. However, you do have to wonder if it doesn't sit a wee bit on the high side. You can actually see a lot of the wheel well behind that tire, and of course makes you wonder whether that shouldn't be dropped maybe a ½ inch or possibly 3/4 inch just to get a perfect ride height. Now the only problem with that is this car doesn't have a nose lift, so that could be a problem. Already I'm starting to scrape on some medium-sized ramps, and I know that could be a problem eventually. If I drop this too much more, I know I'll be scraping a lot on getting up to driveways and gas stations. It would be a problem. So it is sitting good now for the practical sense, but for looks, I would say possibly consider dropping it maybe a ½ inch. And so I have to beg the question, do I even do the modifications? I've done lots of mods on cars in the past, and most of it has turned out very, very well because I usually go with tasteful mods and I don't go overboard. I had a car recently where I went quite a bit further, and I have to say that's more of a rabbit hole. You're going down deep into a rabbit hole because once you go to a certain point, the car becomes unsellable. A lot of people don't really want that. There's a very, very small niche number of people that will want to buy that car off you when you eventually want to sell it, but you know what, that is part of the fun. Again, it's the customization, and maybe that's what you're looking at it for. Maybe it's just to buy a car to have something that nobody else has, even if from a buyer's standpoint. But to build that car, you know that it's going to be twice as difficult to sell, and the more you do to it, the harder it is to deal with after the fact. So that's always something I've considered. That's why I always keep my mods tasteful. I always deal with quality parts, and I never really go too crazy where I start butchering the car. I always do